So if you think information is your problem, if you think knowing how is your problem, it's not your problem. The business, we were doing promotional work for brands like Volkswagen, Pixar Animation Studios. I thought that was the way to create the lifestyle that I wanted. Really what it was an ego stroke. You as the business owner need to be spending at least 50% of your time in marketing and sales. We were consistently about 43% profit margins when we figured out how to scale the business. That was video business. The coaching business is higher. Typically is anywhere between 55 and 60 profit margin. The way that most video professionals think is designing a logo, building a website, all of that bullshit. If you would just go make 10 calls a day rather than doing that, you would find way bigger results. The landscape has changed so much in this industry. They think they're building a brand. That does work for a very small percentage of really big producers. But the biggest key is get really curious about the problems that your clients are experiencing. And there are hidden costs in your business and in your time that you probably have not considered yet.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast, Video Income Secrets. Today's episode is going to be super special. We have my brother, Chad. Brother, how you doing today?
I'm well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. So for the people who don't know about you, can you introduce yourself and just give us an idea? How long have you been doing video? Are you even doing video right now?
Yeah, so I started a video production company called Shade Tree Films in 2009. So what is that? That's 26 years or 16 years. Sorry, I'm not good at math. I'm a creative guy. No, I'm just kidding. 16 years. I actually ended up selling that company in 2021. Through that process of starting and building that production company, you can ask me whatever questions you want about that company. But through the process of starting that company and growing it pretty significantly over a few years, I got really deep into educating other video professionals as well. So within a pretty short time, speaking from stages at creative conferences. There used to be one called In Focus that I spoke at every year, and started individually. I started a company called CineSchool. And this was a hands-on in-person workshop. We would do 5 days together where we covered everything from the business aspect to the creative aspect. And I just fell in love with educating and working with other video professionals, helping them grow something that starts as a creative venture, something they're really passionate about, something that they really love, and helping them turn it into a business that's viable and profitable. And then ultimately, I landed in a space where I really love to help video professionals scale their business. So in the scaling, they can achieve freedom of time and choice. Most video professionals don't have a lot of freedom of choice. They're following the money. Whoever will pay them money, they will go work with, and I help them. You can ask questions. We can get into the details of how I do this, but I teach them to scale their business in a way that it opens up their time so that they can choose to work on what they want to work on. Anyway, so I've been doing that now for about 10 years, about 9 years in that space. And that's what I do full time now. So once I sold the company, I now work full time with videographers, video professionals to scale their businesses, and do that through a couple of different means. My flagship offer is a 3-month accelerator where we build a product within their business. We organize their business in a way that it can scale, and then they go enjoy some freedom.
Wow. So when did you sell the company, your video production company?
2021. I sold it to one of my very first interns.
And so what were you doing exactly? Like what kind of service, who were you servicing in that company?
So it was all commercial work.
Okay.
We were working with commercial brands. So in the height of the business, and that was the other thing that was complicated about the sale, was I was starting to wean out of the company. And my original plan was, because I was doing all of the coaching, my original plan was I was just going to let it peter out, probably close the doors, and then the opportunity came to transfer it over to exit and transfer it over to who's now one of my best friends and was one of our original interns, and then turned cinematographer and editor for our company. So at the height of the business, we were doing promotional work for brands like Volkswagen, Pixar Animation Studios, Target. At the time, I thought, and I meet a lot of video professionals that think this, is that I thought that was the way to create the lifestyle that I wanted. And
Yeah.
ultimately in that I completely, we could talk about this too, we can get deep into this, but I created a life where my business owned me, and I was run ragged and overwhelmed and burnt out most of the time. And it was because of the way that I had structured, and we were going for those really big brand, big ticket deals. Really,
Hmm.
what it was an ego stroke, if I'm being
Yeah.
completely honest. I thought I was doing it for my family, I thought it was doing for my lifestyle, but ultimately it just made me feel really good to be able to say that we did these big deal, these big brand projects. So the landscape has changed so much in this industry over the time that I've been involved in it. But yeah, so we found a sweet spot in producing. Towards the end there, we found a really sweet spot in producing content for companies that were typically doing anywhere from 750 to 2.5 million. They have decent budgets, but they're also decently involved, and they care about the human that they're hiring. And so that was a big change for us, and ultimately much more profitable and sustainable than the bigger stuff.
Oh wow, that's interesting because I don't know if you know. You probably know this guy, full-time filmmaker.
Yeah, yeah.
He just sold his company as well.
Parker Walbeck.
Yeah.
Yeah, his
It
company was
is
much bigger than ours ever was.
okay. Yeah, but it's a similar story because I think he was doing really well.
Yeah.
He
Oh
was
yeah.
doing great.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
He killed full-time filmmaker. He's actually from the area that I'm from in Utah. I followed his journey quite a bit. He did some really great things. I actually don't know the client side of his business very well. I just know the education side of his business pretty well.
Yeah. I think he was doing a little bit of both. He was doing, deals like car brands and things like that. Like a little bit of what you were doing, but at the same time, he was teaching on YouTube. He built a good following on YouTube. He built a good personal brand there.
Yep.
Had some coaching programs as well. And I don't know, he didn't really say why he sold it, but most of it, I was actually on my previous episode, I had a chat with another creative who's doing video, he's hands-on video production kind of guy, and he's not married, and so he's doing like all the shooting and editing and so I was telling him, look, man, like for me, I'm still doing it, but now I have an editor. And the reason why I was kind of forced into it because I was trying to convince him to hire an editor. And I was like, I was forced into it. The time I got married and I got kids, I just didn't have time anymore to
Yeah.
do this. I couldn't shoot and edit at the same time. So I was forced into it. And eventually I end up having to hire my an editor. And those are things that happen when you get your dream gigs and all of a sudden, oops, you don't have time to fulfill,
Yeah.
because of you growing up, you getting more responsibilities. Anyway, so
Well, and
fast forward.
anybody that
Yeah.
wants to scale their business, you can't do that. So if you actually truly want to scale, like when I talk about scale, what we're talking about is more profit for less work. For you as an individual, right? As you as the business owner, if you actually want to scale, there are some very specific things that you have to let go of. And that's a big part of what I teach people to do, because when we get started in this business, we do it all and we're really good at it all. At least we think we're really good at it all. What I discovered is what really unlocked for me is when I discovered that I could hire somebody to edit better than I could. So not only am I not spending all of my time in front of the computer, I can now put all that attention to growing my business and the relationship with my clients and being more creative, but my company gets better and bigger because the product that's coming out is even better than what I was producing when I was trying to do it all. And that's not easy for people, for creatives to hear, is that anybody listening to this, anybody watching this, there's somebody that can do it better than you. I'm sorry, there just is. And they're readily available and willing and want to work with you. And if you actually want to scale this thing, that is crucial. It absolutely is necessary.
I agree with you 100%. I agree. I've been there. So, so let's talk. Fast forward to your current business right now. So now you're coaching creatives,
Mhm.
and you're teaching them how to make consistent income. How did it happen? I mean, I know you mentioned it a little bit how it happened, but like, why were you? Was it about money, or was it about time, saving time, or is it more fulfilling? Because I know most creative are very obsessed with, holding a camera and shooting. It's like it's in us. It's our
Yeah.
curse. So
Yeah. Yeah.
how did it happen for you?
It was just a natural process. It was a natural evolution for me. I loved storytelling. I picked up a camera after my first failed business, which was miserable failure where we lost everything personally, and the business went bankrupt. And I also went into bankruptcy. And I mean, at that point, one of the best things to happen to somebody, at least one of the best things to happen to me, was to lose everything. So I had nothing to lose. And then I could just risk everything. And that's what I did. As soon as that business went under, that was in 2008. It was a real estate business. So we got hit by that real estate bubble burst. And it was like almost overnight that we literally had basically nothing. And I picked up a camera. I remembered that I loved doing it in high school. I was part of the film club and, all of that sort of stuff, and took film classes in high school and remembered that I loved it. I was just like, what the hell? I'm just going to pick up a camera and see what happens. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the storytelling aspect, evoking emotion, digging out a story where there didn't seem to be one, and all of that, telling people, showing people the world from my perspective, or this thing from my perspective. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. And then we built the company. I say we because at the time I had a 50-50 partner, and that I loved doing it until it became all consuming, and I allowed it to become all consuming. And as soon as I saw that I had allowed it to get in the way of the father that I wanted to be, the husband that I was committed to being, all of that sort of stuff, I just kind of lost a passion for holding the camera.
Yeah.
And my passion then became, how do I make this thing sustainable?
Hmm.
And the sustainability of it drove me to think much more of it as a business,
Hmm.
think of myself as a business owner rather than a storyteller. And through that process, I learned how to scale it. I learned how to do it in a way that I could have the life that I wanted in the time that I wanted. And then once I did that, I got so excited about it, I wanted to teach others how to do it. And then once I started teaching and coaching others, that was it for me. Like, that was the natural evolution. I was like, oh, this is fun. I love doing this. I love watching these guys that have been doing this for 5, 6, 10 years and have just been grinding out, and watching them quickly evolve their business into something that produces freedom so they can actually work on the things they want to work on. They can fall back in love with that storytelling because they have a base business that's running, and then they could
Yeah.
choose to take this project, whether it has profit in it or not, but it's the story they want to tell. That's what I
Hmm.
love. That's what brings me alive.
Nice. So how much were you making back then before you transitioned to what you're doing right now?
Personally, or the business?
Let's say the business.
The height of revenue in our business was 800K annually. We did that consistently for about 5 years.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And now you're doing better, I would assume.
No, it's not better, but it's not really why I'm doing it. I mean, obviously I like money. Who doesn't like
Yeah.
money? Anybody that says they don't is
Yeah.
crazy.
It's a lot.
Because it's a tool of freedom. It's a tool of
Yeah.
choice. When you have it, you have freedom and you have choice, and there's a certain amount of peace that comes with making decent money. But now I had a partner in that business, and then I also had a full-time team in that business. And so revenue, this is one of the things that I show people, is that revenue, actually a revenue figure is pretty, it doesn't matter. Honestly, people talk about revenue all the time because you can hide behind revenue. Some people have $1.5 million in revenue, but they're in the red, 200K every year.
Yeah.
but they'll talk about 1.5 revenue and it sounds really good and
Yeah.
you know, it's ego stroking. So what I like to talk about is profitability margins. We were consistently about 43% profit margins when we figured
Okay.
out how to scale the business.
That's the current business or the
That was
old?
video business. Yep.
Okay, the video business.
The coaching business is higher. The coaching business typically is anywhere between 55 and 60 profit margin.
Nice.
So the revenue can be lower, but the profit margins are high,
Yeah, the
and
profit,
you
yeah.
achieve. Yep.
So do you currently have a team or it's just you?
I have a team, but it's very scrappy. So I have an assistant that takes care of all of my logistical things, my scheduling, all of the communication, the book, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And then I have a coach that works with me that does some of the support inside of the accelerator.
So now you're coaching. I would say, would you say the main business right now is coaching, or you still doing some of the things that you teach in your coaching program?
I'm not doing any video. I
Okay.
still am like I mentioned, I'm still not a silent partner. I don't even know how you would put it. I'm a partner in Shade Tree Films still,
Okay.
but I'm on the backside of it. So consulting on it, advising on it, that kind of stuff. I'm not out there in production. The last time I was on production was South by Southwest. We did a bunch of work for South by Southwest 2 years ago, and I was actually on location for that, mostly because I wanted to be, what we were doing was really exciting and fun, so I wanted to be out there, but I haven't been in production for a while.
But you still have shares in there, still making money. So do you ever get worried that maybe what you're teaching will get outdated if you're not kind of doing it like hands-on?
No, I don't, because I learn so much from my clients.
Okay.
I'm in these conversations every day, all day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm hearing the pain points. And then we get to some of my clients, like my one-to-one clients. So I have the accelerator, but then I also have one-to-one clients that would be like my higher end clients, and I'm much more deeply involved in their business. So I get to actually experiment with them. But here's the thing, business principles are business principles. That's it. The business principles that people were successful with in the 50s are the same business principles that they are successful with today. Principles. Tools change. Desires change, all of that sort of stuff, but
Yeah.
those aren't principles. And actually, one of the problems is that a lot of people mistake modality for principles, and then they end up becoming outdated, or what's the word, irrelevant, because they didn't keep their business principles, but shift the modality as the market changes and as the desire changes. So I'm not too worried about that. I mean, have fully integrated, not fully, I'm sure there's a lot more I could do. I have heavily integrated AI into what I teach video people. And once again, I completely teach on the business side. I don't teach any of the creative,
Yeah.
any of that sort of stuff. So the principles should remain the same.
Cool. All right. So now let's talk about the money part.
Yeah.
So you told me you have two offers currently.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the promise? 10K a month? Do you have any sort of guarantees, promises, things like that? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
I promise that they will 3 times their investment in the first year, or I'll work with them until they do. So for the accelerator, the investment is $6,500. So that's for the 3-month accelerator. I promise that utilizing what I teach them, they'll triple that. If they don't, we'll work with them until they do. And then the individual coaching is quoted on an individual basis depending on what they want. Some of them I'm meeting with multiple times a week. We're in every little aspect of their business. Other ones we're meeting every other week, and it's just a simple coaching call that goes an hour, hour and a half.
So what are you seeing right now? Like, what are the trends? What are the things that are kind of working in video space right now, looking at your students, your past students and your current students, and why you are actually teaching? What's working now?
Niching, but not just niching, not in the traditional sense, like a client profile, like, oh, I work for this industry or this type of person. What I call it is problem niching. So discovering a problem that people are experiencing and then developing a single product that solves that problem for that niche. The problem that they're experiencing may be they're spending a lot of time training their people. Like if we're talking about a business that's high in training, this could be like a manufacturing business or, and they spend a ton of time and money training their people. I have one student who went after this problem, and his MVP, I call it an MVP, most valuable product. I call it the most valuable product because it becomes the foundation of your business, and it's profitable and it's repeatable. But once he discovered how to speak the language for mostly manufacturing companies around training videos or a series of training videos. The other cool thing is that these things have to be updated, every 6 months for most industries.
Yeah.
So it's a repetitive, the need is there, the problem is there, and he saves them tons and tons of money and time producing training material and content. And he just does it on repeat with these same clients. And the beautiful thing about that is he has learned, and this is what I teach, is he's learned to speak the language of problem solving to this particular client who has this problem. Instead of talking about video, instead of talking about storytelling, which, sorry, not many business owners give a shit about.
Okay.
They just don't. But if you really want to be attractive to a business owner, talk to them about their problem, explain it to them better than they can explain it themselves. And then you become the expert. You become the resource for the solution. And so that's an example of that's what's working right now. And video, this isn't going to be anything that anybody hasn't heard or experienced or already know, but video is still incredibly necessary and useful in the marketplace, but it has lost its luster. Like when I started my company, it was at the beginning of DSLRs and accessible equipment, and you could make a really incredible looking image, and everybody was just like googly-eyed over it because you could take these storytelling tools that were so inaccessible by the small guy. Now they're really accessible and you can do it for really cheap. And it just exploded. Like, I'll be honest, like a huge part of our success in Shade Tree was very lucky that we hit the market when we hit the market. Competition was extremely low. Doing the level of work that we were doing at the budgets that we could do it at. The alternative was a big production team that was really expensive. That's not the case anymore. People could do this with their iPhone. I know videographers don't like to hear that. I know video professionals don't like to hear that. But now it's not about, and this is where I'll probably ruffle some feathers in this conversation, but one of the things that I do as just like a practice for myself is I go and try to find as many websites as I possibly can for videographers, just so I can see the copy that they're using and how they're positioning themselves. And they're still using language that worked in 2012. It doesn't work anymore. If your headline on your website says, what's a semblance of the most common thing? We are master storytellers that connect you with your clients. No, sorry. That's just not it. It doesn't stand out. It's not the problem that people are trying to solve with video anymore. It's got to be so much more specific. It's got to be so much more speaking to them. Now, if I go to a website, I came across one the other day that said, we help medical professionals explain complicated medical problems to everyday clients. Now that, and I happen to know, as soon as I found it, I reached out to kind of find out who they were and very successful. Very successful. And by the way, the normal public, I didn't know this until I talked to them. That's only a branch of their video production business, but it looks like the whole thing. right? Because I mean, they've done a very good job at speaking directly to a problem solving niche.
Wow, that's so good. So every videographer should niche.
Absolutely.
Yeah, should niche
Absolutely.
down.
Now, here's the thing. I can already hear it, like, because I get it every single day, is like videographers' skin crawls when they hear that. It's like, hell
know.
no. I'm not doing the same thing over and over and over again every single. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not asking you to totally niche your business. The cool thing about the online world right now is you can have multiple profiles. And so create an MVP, your most valuable product, create that, create marketing material around it. But then you can do all kinds of other things, especially when that one thing is bringing in a base revenue that sustains you and sustains your team. Now you can go create another branch of your product or whatever. The other thing that's contradictory to what most people teach and the way that most video professionals think is they think they're building a brand, and that could work and does work for a very small percentage of really big producers. When I say big, like high revenue producing,
Yeah.
like to be a recognizable name and brand
Yeah.
in the industry is
Yeah.
very tough.
Yeah. I
So
agree.
I always encourage people, forget, like, that's all. The desire for that is like ego from my perspective. Let go of all of that and go solve problems for people. And you can have multiple brands. You could have multiple, it's like, you don't, Apple, this is a bad example because it's so big, but at least it's relatable, right? It's like Apple is not an iPhone company. It's one of the products they're well known for, but it's not the only product.
Yeah.
They have the iPhone, they have the iPad, they have the iMac. Oh, they have the Mac Mini. They have the, blah, 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 on and Apple Watch, on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
That's what I encourage people to do. And of course, Apple's a well-known brand, and I get that. That's where the analogy breaks apart. But you don't need that well-known brand to have products that solve specific problems for specific people. And by the way, if you want people to talk about your work, then you have to solve a problem. Because once you solve a problem for people, you become a hero. They want to talk about you.
So what you're saying is people should stop making good-looking videos and start making videos that actually solve problems.
Well, if making them good looking is your goal or your primary goal, yeah. But I actually think both can be true.
Yeah, you could do both.
Yeah, it's not black or white, man. There's a lot of nuance in this world. We can have both. That's this sign on my hat that's what this is for. Is it reminds me that we can have both. You can both be creative, tell good stories, make them look really beautiful, and actually solve a problem people are wanting to solve.
But what is the most important? Obviously, I'm not telling people to make shitty videos, but because
Well,
we're all creative.
Let me turn the question back on you. Think about the landscape of video, not professional video, but just video in general. What's the usefulness of video now?
So if I'm being honest, like I'll give you an example. I'm a YouTuber and I watch YouTube.
Me too.
And back in the day, I used to just watch the most good-looking videos on YouTube, kind of. But now I don't care. I go to YouTube looking for value
Yes.
most of the time. Things I only care about.
That's
I don't
right.
care. I mean, there's like some sort of like quality threshold. But now most videos look good anyways on YouTube. They look good and sound good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't really care about like a super high-end edited video anymore. Sometimes I would just spend my time on YouTube rather than spending my time on Netflix. And Netflix has like the best, movies
Yep.
and well shot and high budgets, but I don't care. I care more
Yeah.
about the raw stories on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right. Well, and
So-
all you have to do is look at the statistics to see this.
Yeah.
Network television is fractions of viewers of what it was before YouTube really hit its stride. And that should tell people. Now, when you talk about your personal experience, it's valuable, but you also have to understand you have blind spots. because you are a video professional.
True,
You
true.
appreciate good looking video. You know
True.
what it takes to make good looking video, and
Yeah.
you kind of get off on it. I do too,
Yeah.
man. I'm in that same boat, but I have
Yeah.
to put myself in the position of the consumer.
Yeah.
And what the consumer cares about now is value.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about the democratization of video is that people's fluff sensors have gotten so sharp. They know when this thing is just fluff and produced beautifully, but it's terrible in story or doesn't have any value. They
Yeah.
know it almost immediately.
Yeah.
And so now people are valuing value and story and like, what's this going to do for me is much more valued than does it look good. And I'm like you, man. I still love, like I was watching White Lotus with my wife the other night, and every shot in that show is gorgeous. Every single shot is gorgeous
Yeah.
and consistent and beautiful. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is so good.
Kinda
And my
triggers you
wife is going,
somewhere.
what are you
What
talking
the
about?
heck?
Like, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. True.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you're a video professional, you're not making content for other video professionals. Actually, you might be. And that's a problem. Because when somebody's thinking about jumping into my accelerator and I have a discovery call with them, one of the biggest fears that comes up is, what will other video people think? If I were to come out with this MVP or this, this thing, and it's not this beautifully shot, or, you don't see me with a red and, all of this stuff, like what they won't think I'm successful, or they won't think I'm good at it or whatever. And if that's your goal in life is for other video professionals to like think you're cool, then keep going, do that thing. I was there once, and it's a lonely road and it's a never ending chase. But if you actually want to scale, if you actually want to create a business that sustains you for life, and you want to live a life outside of your profession, then you probably ought to start thinking about the way that people who actually pay you. You might want to actually start thinking about what they value.
That's so good. So, what's the most amount of money have you made for a student? I mean, it's not you making the money for them, but like some of the success stories.
Some of the success stories of my students, I mean, it's all over the place. So
Yeah, let's pick one who made the most amount of money.
yeah, I've had a student that tripled their revenue in 6 months. So going from about 225 in revenue to somewhere about 680, something like that. I don't have the figures. I love how specific you are. I don't have the figures in front of me. The most important part of that is taking the profitability from like 22% to 43%.
What were they doing wrong and what did they do right to be able to get those results?
They built a product that people actually wanted to buy.
And before they were just
And they learned how to talk to people about it and sell it.
so before they were just making cinematic videos that look good.
Well, it's not even necessarily that. It's that they were order takers. So a company comes to them and says, hey, we want this video and we want it to look like this and we want it to do this. And so 1 week they're working on a product video, and then the next week they're working on a administrative video for a college. And then the next week they're working on this over here. And every single time they're reinventing the wheel. It's a long pre-production process to get acquainted with everything, all of that sort of stuff. So I just want to be clear. I'm not anti making good looking videos. I am I would say, not having a repeatable process. And when you are an order taker, when it's just like, I will go wherever the money is, I can make whatever, which is totally the mentality that I had in the early days, which actually we grew pretty significantly on, but I let it ruin my life. Yeah, just that. They were doing something different every single week, and there was no consistency. And then that related into feast and famine periods, which everybody that I talk to that's thinking about jumping into the accelerator, they experience a feast and famine process. When it's coming in, they're getting tons and tons and tons of work. And when it's slow, it's really slow. And they wonder if it's ever going to come back. And so, yeah, it's a complicated question. They were doing a lot of things that weren't working. But ultimately, if I were to put it in terms of one thing, it's that they didn't have a repeatable system.
Let's say someone wanted to make 10K monthly, kind of repeatable, recurring income. And they say that they're still doing like gigs here and there, like you just mentioned with this, like your client. What would be the key steps to take? Like step-by-step guide, what would they have to do?
Yeah. So here's how I teach my students to get started in this process. Look at the past year. Identify the most profitable project that you worked on in the last year. Okay. If you don't know the profitability of your projects individually, that's a problem. If you're not factoring your time into the profitability of your projects, that's a problem. If you don't have a buyback number, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Martell, but he wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time. In that book, he helps you create a formula in which you discover your buyback dollar number. And the buyback dollar number is anything that you can hire under that dollar amount, you hire out if you actually want to grow your business and scale it. Okay. So we identify the buyback number, and then that's your value. That's what the company pays you basically, right? Anything under that, but that's a different topic. So get clear on your profitability. Know your numbers. If you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And most likely the numbers are not what you think they are. This is the process that we go through in the first 2 weeks of the accelerator. And I can tell you 90% of the people that go through this process are surprised at their actual numbers. They're factoring in their rental gear expenses and their travel expenses and all that sort of stuff. But then when we start talking about the hidden costs of doing business and their time, that's when it gets really serious. So look back over your past year. Identify your most profitable job. Next, identify the problem that you solved for that client. Why did they hire you? What was the result of the content that you produced for them? Did it have results? Did it actually work? Go through that process of the problem that they wanted to solve. Did you solve the problem? How did it solve the problem? And what were the results of solving that problem? Once you have all of that information, once you've gathered all of that information, now you can start to build a product around that problem, because I guarantee you, if that client had that problem and it was solvable by video, or at least in part by video, I'm not saying video can solve the whole problem, but it can certainly help. And when you think about the problem, you have to boil it down. Alex Hormozi boils it down to 3 different categories. Really, people only have problems in 3 categories. It's wealth, relationships, and status. That's it. Those are the 3 core problems. And I agree with him. So you want to take the problem and you want to boil it down to one of those 3 categories and identify the flavor of it in those categories. Because when you do that and you can speak to that problem in those categories, it's going to hit the core of the person. Otherwise, if it's just like, connect with their clients more, no. That's not a real problem. People don't want to connect with their clients more. That doesn't pay their bills. That doesn't do anything. It's what does the connection get them? It gets them more revenue, or it improves their reputation, which would be status, or the relationship part. I guess connection could relate to the relationship part, but what part of the relationship is not working? What's the problem in the relationship, and how does it fix it? So you want to get down to the core, and this is not easy to do, man. This is where it takes coaching, because I mentioned earlier, we have blind spots. And they're called blind spots because we can't see them. Yeah. So you typically need somebody else to help you see what you're not seeing. And this is one of those processes where a lot of blind spots exist. So now you can build a product answering that problem for other clients that have the same problem. Now, the magic comes in going and learning about what it is actually like for them to have that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to be able to sell it to them, you have to understand and be able to name the problem better than they can. I was on an accelerator call just yesterday, and one of our accelerator members said, for the very first time, Chad, I sat down with this client and I just asked them. I've been working. He said he'd been working with them for like 3 years with ongoing projects. And he said, for the first time, I took 30 minutes and I just asked them, I got so curious about their problem, what they're experiencing, and why they think video is going to solve it. And it gave me all of this new idea of how I could serve them. It helped me understand their budgets better. It opened up a bigger budget conversation because they could see his interest in actually being a partner in solving that problem with them. On and on and on. So you could develop that product, you can develop all the marketing and language around that problem, and then you can go sell it in a very powerful way on repeat. And then you can build a system around the product. The final phase of our accelerator is building the flywheel. What a flywheel is it's a machine that moves ongoing, and you can put things onto the flywheel that will then put that in motion, right? So you build a system that is the flywheel, and then you can take clients and just plug it in. And you've already got the sales process in place. You already have the pre-production process in place. It's already spinning and turning. You've got the production and post-production. You've got the upsell. You've got the follow-up. All of that is already spinning, and you're just plugging clients into it. So that's a really high level. There's a ton of nuances to it.
Yeah.
But that's the best step by step we can do in this scenario.
So what are some of the tools that you actually recommend, or some of the trending tools right now when it comes to video marketing and things like that?
What do you mean by training tools?
Tools like CRM, maybe Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Sales calls and things like that. Like, the creatives should be using to run their video production businesses.
Yeah. Well, one thing about this is, so a lot of the work that I do with my clients is actually building systems into their business. I would say most production companies that I start working with don't have systems. It's all in their head. Maybe they've got like smaller systems that are all over the place, but creating a central place for your systems. Part of my background is I've also consulted and done fractional work with tech companies. So these are tech companies, usually smaller, typically like employees of 30 to 90 people, and helping them implement systems around the chaos that they've created. And what typically happens is they've got Google Docs and they've got whatever. They've got all of these different systems, and they know how they all work together.
Yeah.
But if you actually scaled your business, what would happen is that it would break very fast.
Yeah.
Or you would go insane because it's all the knowledge in your head. So you're going to get a million questions. It's going to be, it's going to be chaos. So getting as much of what's in your head down on paper, using something like Notion. I use Notion a lot for organizing a lot of my SOPs and my job descriptions and all of that sort of stuff. And I also teach that as well. I've actually just started using ClickUp, and I'm actually taking everything from Notion, from Google Docs, from email, all of that, and I'm putting it into ClickUp, and it's been a really powerful tool for business organization. And it's a project-based format, but you can do so many things. You can create a company wiki in there. It can be your CRM. It can be, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm really on the process definition and organization side of stuff.
So some of the biggest mistakes that creators are making when it comes to video marketing, things like that, what are the mistakes that you see? I know you mentioned some of the mistakes that you see people making, not understanding the potential clients, prospects, problems, and things like that. But are there any other mistakes that you think people should avoid?
Yeah, not knowing their time value, not tracking their time. not knowing the profitability of individual projects. Like even knowing, you may know, like you're like at the end of the year when you do your taxes or you do all your reconciling for your business, you may know your overall profit, but that is not all that useful when you think about what your action plan is for the next year. So you want to know individual project profitability and your average individual project profitability. That's going to give you leverage, and it's going to allow you to identify, like you're a YouTuber, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you pay pretty close attention to your back end stats.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do the same thing. What's more useful for you for future action? Individual video stats or channel stats?
Well, eventually channel stats.
How come?
Well, because that's the big picture of the the channel. Yes, of course, I want to check the individual video stats as well, because that's what makes the entire channel.
Yeah, but when you think about future steps, like what videos you're going to make next, or how well your packaging performed, like your title and your thumbnail, all of that, you can't know any of that based on your channel stats, really.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Mostly, I will look at the most performing videos.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you look at the most performing videos and see why people are actually watching those, and you're trying to double down on.
That's
on
right.
that.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. So it's the exact same principle in your business. Sure, you can look at your overall statistics, and that's a good indicator of where you've been. But if you want a good indicator for next decisions, future decisions, you've
Yeah.
got to look at the individual projects and how
Yeah.
well they've performed
Yeah.
around profitability mostly, but also I encourage people to keep like a journal almost of their enjoyment of certain projects as well, and to factor that into how they make their future decisions, both with clients they're going to work with and projects they're going to work on.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the key things. Like personally, I've struggled with marketing. As a creative person, I actually went through some coaching as well, and had to invest in education, because I was that guy. I just wanted to make good looking videos or make videos on YouTube and get subscribers and followers. But when it came to things like marketing, sales, getting leads, outreach, things like that, I knew nothing. I didn't know how to approach that aspect of the business.
Yeah.
And I believe many videographers or creatives struggle with that aspect, because we spend most of the time trying to learn how to use the camera, the tools, and how to edit, how to color grade, how to get the most cinematic video out there. So what would you say, like, how for someone who's just focused on making good videos right now, and maybe getting referrals, people just see the videos and they refer him to someone else, blah 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 blah, but they're not doing any marketing.
Yeah.
Like, what would be your advice to that person, and how would they get started into like really getting focused and doing a little more marketing for their business?
Yeah, so there's this idea. This isn't my idea, but it's, again, Dan Martell. I mentioned him earlier, but his figure is 50-50. So if you're a business owner who wants to actually grow your business, who actually wants to scale your business, growth and scale are different. You get that, right? Growth is you can get more revenue, but it might ruin your life. Scaling is you can get more profit and freedom. So that's the differentiator. If you actually want to scale, his figure is you as the business owner need to be spending at least 50% of your time in marketing and sales. 50% of your time in marketing sales. If you actually, and it's true, I've seen it over and over and over again. And by the way, let's say in the first, this is a made up number, but I'm just going to put it out there so people can get an idea for a benchmark. But like in the first $750,000 in revenue per year phase, you cannot hire somebody else to do this for your business. Sorry, you can't. It's just not going to work. It's expensive to have somebody doing your marketing and sales. That's one thing. And then if you don't understand it really well, you can't teach other people how to do it. And if you do hire somebody and it's not working, you're not going to know how to help them troubleshoot it. So it is absolutely crucial that you're spending, about at least 50% of your time in this realm. Now, that's probably surprising to people, but probably not helpful. Something that's helpful in that is that just go discover. Get really curious. Ask a lot of questions. You just don't know because you haven't discovered. It's not because you're not good at it or blah, 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 all of that sort of stuff. Like if you really want something, if you really, like for you, Sam, like YouTube, when you decided you were going to create a channel or post your first video or even your 10th video, you had no idea what you were doing. Right? But you wanted it so much that you went and figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's with anything. It's the same principle with learning to shoot or learning to edit. When all of us started, we didn't know shit. We knew nothing.
Yeah.
And we wanted it so bad that we went and figured it out. We practiced, we tried things, we asked questions, we got mentors, we got education, whatever, all of the watched YouTube, all of the resources that are available. The thing about this day and age, and when I say that phrase, I feel like I sound so old, but the thing about it is that lack of information is not the problem. There's more information on every topic that you could consume. You couldn't consume it in 100 lifetimes. So if you think information is your problem, if you think knowing how is your problem, it's not your problem.
It's not.
If you wanted it, you would go figure it out. You would go find it. Probably, I mean, you could get the information all day long for free. And if free information isn't getting it there for you, there's plenty of resources that you can go hire and pay money for that would be really valuable to do that as well. But the biggest key, if we're just going to give some information here, like the biggest key for me is go ask questions. Get really curious about the problems that your clients are experiencing. Because if you understand that, you look at any big brand, let's just take McDonald's for example, and any brand of that size has teams of psychologists and marketers and all of that sort of stuff to come together and ask questions and do discovery around what is it that people really want? What is it that they really like? What do they want to feel? And then that informs their marketing and sales.
Yeah.
But then you have the small business guy, the video guy, who's just like, I don't know, I don't want to do that. I just want to make videos. Well, okay, that's fine. But if you actually want to sell those videos in a meaningful way at a good price, you're going to have to go find out what's on the other side of the deal. What is their psychology? What do they think about? What do they fear? What do they want to feel? All of that sort of stuff. And if you submerge yourself in that, the marketing is going to come out of it. The ideas and the language and everything that you use will come out of that.
So, wow. And I just feel like you answered all the questions that I had for you.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yes.
All right. And I think this is like, it's the same thing, but I guess it's worth saying, is make 10 calls a day. Talk to people.
10
Get
calls.
no's.
Like cold outreach?
Yeah. Cold, warm, doesn't matter. Who cares? Like everybody wants to talk about cold outreach is wasted time or dead or whatever. Warm out. Who cares? I don't care if it's cold or warm. Just talk to people. You're not going to grow this thing. You're not going to scale this thing in a vacuum. You need to have conversations with people. And if you do follow that rule, that 50% rule, 10 calls a day, 10 outreach efforts a day is like what, an hour?
Yeah. That takes me to my next question, which is how do you find those contacts, those leads? You run ads?
Gosh, that's a big question, man.
Do you use content? Do you do in-person events, kind of, networking? What's the best way?
Yes. All of them.
Okay.
Do them all. I'm being a little facetious, but you know what I mean? Like whatever idea it is for you to have more conversations with people, do that. If your idea is to jump on LinkedIn and start finding your clients in your target market, and that's the other thing is like, if you don't have a niche, if you don't have a problem solving niche figured out, outreach is going to be so overwhelming and a huge waste of time.
Yeah, you're gonna be all over the place.
Yeah, you're not even going to know where to start.
True.
But if I run a video production that explains complicated medical procedures to non-medical customers, I know who to go find now.
Yeah.
Physicians, dentists, I know exactly where to start. Where do those people hang out? What are they listening to? What's their problem? All of that sort of now it becomes fun because I know where to go. And I know the feeling of servicing everybody. And when things are slow and you want more business and you want more conversations and you actually are committed to doing some outreach, it sucks because it's like, oh man, this world is a big place. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, you're right. 100% right. Even your website, you don't know what to put there.
That's right.
You don't know what kind of testimonial you put there because it's gonna be a mix of everything, and the person who lands on your website, they will be like, "It's confusing. This is not what I'm looking for."
Not for me. I don't see my problem here anywhere.
Yeah. Do you believe websites are not a thing anymore, or?
I believe, and this is outside of my expertise. I mean, I'm not a web expert by any means, but my own experience is that websites can be a secondary form of validation. So gone are the days of Googling, videographer in my area or whatever, and Google gives you 3 top results of videographers and their websites. That's even Google search. I was just reading this thing the couple days ago where ChatGPT searches are now overtaking Google searches.
Oh, wow.
So it's almost to the point where people are searching on ChatGPT more than Google. Which is insane. But anyway,
so how do you rank on ChatGPT?
There are SEO people that are doing SEO ranking stuff, teaching SEO ranking on ChatGPT. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent. But and just think about your own personal experience, right? You probably aren't finding out about a product or a service from their website. You're finding out about them on a podcast or on social media or something like that. And then when you hear about them and you have an experience of them and you think I might want to engage with that product or that professional, then you might go to the website and check it out. So in that sense, it's really valuable because it can validate the first experience that they had. But it's my experience is that it's very rarely a first experience thing anymore.
Yeah. I think it is still important, but it's not as important as it used to be. Most people now are doing funnels and things like that, just landing pages for specific products and offers. And I think that's what's working more. Especially if you're serving 2 different niches, you probably want to have 2 different landing pages. And
that's right. That's exactly what I teach and we actually don't even go the landing page in the accelerator. We don't even get to the landing page part of it. We just produce what I call the MVP story, and it's a PDF for this particular product. And most likely it doesn't really even go beyond that because that MVP story it outlines their problem. It outlines how we solve their problem. It has a case study of somebody who we did this for in the past and the results that they got, specific results that they got. It has just a little bit about us as a company. And then it has a bunch of testimonials. And what I have found using that MVP story is that most clients don't even want to look beyond that. They just don't really care to. Time is short. That has everything they need to see. Yeah. And so that's been really powerful. So one of the things that I teach early on in the accelerator is, as we develop your product, as we develop your MVP, don't go waste your time building a website around it, all of that sort of stuff. First, you haven't done the R&D necessary to find out if it's actually a viable product, which you have to do. And so many of us, especially creatives, we don't see it as wasting time, but we do waste a lot of time and avoid the hard things by going and designing a logo, building a website, all of that bullshit. If you would just go make 10 calls a day rather than doing that, you would find way bigger results.
True. We want to make it look good.
Yeah.
That's who we are, man. We cursed. That's our curse. We want to make it look good. Get a logo, have matching colors and the whole branding thing. Make it look good. You're right. Oh, man. Yo, this is so good. But unfortunately, we have to land the plane. So what are your last words before we end this episode? Key message you want to give to creators in general, creatives, when it comes to marketing, making money, and the good stuff?
I already mentioned it, but if I could take one thing away from this conversation, it would be to get very clear on your numbers. Get very clear on current reality of where you actually are as a business. And this with the caveat, and notice I've put everything in the context of wanting to scale. Some people don't want to scale, and that's totally fine. I'm just not the guy for any information if you're not wanting to scale. If you want to remain a 1 or 2 person band and work all the time and do that gig, like, that's cool. I got no judgment on that. You don't really need to probably do anything different than you're already doing. But if you do want to scale, you have to get clear on where you actually are. And there are hidden costs in your business and in your time that you probably have not considered yet. So get really familiar with what those are, and in getting connected to what's current for you, what's actually real, you will notice where the opportunities are and where there's waste or where there's things that aren't working. But right now, you're probably going a million miles an hour, fulfilling, and not paying much attention to this. And so you miss so many opportunities for growth, so many opportunities for profitability, because you're chasing that next dollar or that next client. So get really familiar with where you are. This is where I have my clients start. They actually can't even start in the accelerator until they do this exercise of getting very specific about their numbers, because we can't scale. We can't do any significant action in the business unless they know. By the way, I would say this is a made up number, but I'm just going through my head. I've probably, in my years of working with video professionals, I've probably only had 3 or 4 that have come to me that actually knew what these numbers were.
That's how ignorant we are.
Well, it's not ignorance. Maybe it's willful ignorance, right? It's but it's just, I get it. It's the grind. It's not what you love. It's not the sexy part.
True.
Right? Of course, you are very up on the latest technology and cameras and software and computers and lighting.
Drones.
Of course you are, because that's the sexy side.
Yeah.
But that stuff ultimately is not going to scale your company.
Yo, man, this is really good, man. I enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure my viewers are going to enjoy the conversation as well. So if people, obviously, we're going to link some of your programs in the show notes down below. But let's say someone wants to reach out to you, needs help with coaching, or just need help with your expertise, just help with something just to get those numbers up. What's the best way to reach out to you? So
couple things I'm offering. One is I run a private mastermind group that is free for video professionals. We meet once a week, and it's a really tight-knit network of video professionals who help each other out, provide resources. It's a really fun group. It's not for everybody. There is an application process, but it is free if it's the right fit. So I want to let people know that you can hit me up and apply for that. The best way to do it is to connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a DM, and I can send you a link to that application. That's the first thing. Second thing is, on my website, founder-freedom.com, there is a scalability masterclass. So a lot of the principles that you and I covered today, plus a lot more, and a lot of the nuances are inside that masterclass, and they can download that for free as well on the website. So those are two places to both connect with me and to get some more of the information that we've been exploring today.
All right, man. Yo, Chad, thanks so much for being here, man. I do appreciate your time. And this was a super value-packed conversation. Again, as I said, I enjoyed it. And I'm so happy, man, that we could connect. Hopefully, we're going to have you back at some point. But other than that, man, I do appreciate you. And for the people watching, I'm sure if you're watching on YouTube, YouTube is going to suggest you a cool episode to watch somewhere here. So, guys, thank you so much for being with us today. And let us know if you enjoyed the podcast. Other than that, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Sam.